And just in case there's any audio issues, I will give us a little clap.
I'll give us 2 claps.
Okay, awesome. So welcome, Reverend Patricia. I'm Reverend Thomas. We are here from Unity, Vancouver Island.
We are.
And this is our very first podcast for
Project Phoenix Rising.
Yes,
yeah.
our joint effort.
Yes.
And I think today we're going to discuss spirituality.
We are. We're going to define spirituality.
Okay, define spirituality in our terms, in Unity's terms, a mix of both?
Yes, and or all three.
Or all three, okay.
There are many, many definitions for this particular word, and they're all valid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe before we get there, for those that don't know us, maybe we should talk just a little bit about who we are and you know how we got to where we are. And I'll let you go first. So if you could just maybe let us know how long you've been a minister and, you know.
I've been a minister for 24 years now. First with Centers for Spiritual Living.
Yeah.
And for the last 7 years with Unity.
Okay, and that 7 years has been done here on Vancouver Island?
Here at Unity on Vancouver Island.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. And you are the reason I'm here, partly.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And it was a great joy when the day you came to me and said, "Hey, I like this stuff. I think I want to do it."
I think I want to be up there or something to that effect. And so yes, for me, it's been 5.5 years of schooling, and this is my first year into being officially ordained, as I was ordained in June of 2023, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be here and know you and to have had this experience. And so enough of that.
Yeah.
Spirituality.
Spirituality.
So why do you think we have this calling? And I know it's not everybody that seems to have this calling, but there's certainly enough people that are looking for something in their lives, or you have this feeling or this vibration, whatever you want to call it, that calls to them. And you know, you've been at this longer than I have. What do you think is going on?
I think everybody is looking for this, and some people don't know it. And of course, they're looking for it in all the wrong places. Since the beginning of time, people have sat around the campfire and looked up at the stars and says, "What's it all about? Why am I here? Who am I? How did I get here? Where am I going? And how do I relate to all that I see?" And if you're not thinking about that, you're just kind of numbing yourself with something else, I reckon.
Yeah, the numbing,
Yeah.
right? And certainly, I don't know if you've had that in your life.
Oh, yeah. I've had numb years, yes.
I've certainly had those times in my life where I've been numbing myself from this. And I agree a lot with what you said. For me, it's always been even when I was a kid, and I think, you know, I don't know if this is because of what my parents believed, if I took on some of my parents' beliefs, I'm sure I did. But I always have felt that there's a goodness, there's a something that calls to me to be, to better myself, to be a better person to others. Would you say that is part of that calling?
I like to think that's our human nature. And it's ironic that, as you say, as children, we have this sense, and I call it natural knowing. You just know some things about yourself and about the world. And at the same time, children are having to balance that with the dogma they're being presented and learn to be critical about that. Maybe discerning is a better word, but what feels right to me. And, you know, some people fit in with a religious dogma and they like the structure and they like being told, and other people just need to explore. And that's where spirituality comes in.
Yeah, that's kind of what it felt like for me, the calling, you know. And that first day I came to Unity and I heard you speak, and I was just like, I think there's something here for me. There was that calling. But as you were saying that, something else that I'm finding prevalent in the world today is in the conversation around indoctrination. That anytime, you know, and me being a parent right now, anytime I'm putting my beliefs on my children,
Yes.
isn't that there's those that argue that that is just me indoctrinating my kids into something.
Yes.
And I wonder where does that fit in the world of teaching goodness or ethics or teaching respecting others? Like, isn't that also, couldn't you also argue that all of that is indoctrination?
Of course it is. And you can't fault the parents for doing that, because if they truly believe something, then they consider it important in caring for their children, that the children should know that truth. The trouble is, of course, is when they also haven't looked critically at what they've been indoctrinated in. And that's what we do in Unity, is look at all those beliefs that have been put on us, whether we knew they were there or not, whether we knew we were buying into them or not. We are being influenced by beliefs and understandings that may not be true and may be doing us detriment. So it's just like how difficult it is for parents now to know how tight a rein they need to keep on. They need to drive them to school. They can't go out and play anymore. And yet, for their safety, you understand that, but for their growth and development and connection, that's not good. So there's always this balance in all of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's two things there that I remember. I think it was the Clifford Robert Olson case.
Oh my goodness, yes.
That was the day that kids could no longer walk to school. I seem to that sort of rings true to me, that up until then there was no concept. It was like you wouldn't drive your kids; they would walk to school. They'd take their bike to school.
From kindergarten, I walked to school, and it was quite a long way.
Yeah, and what nowadays that just isn't possible. The fear factor has gone up since that revelation, or since that discovery, and that that happened. And I remember it here. It was was here on the Lower Mainland that was the first really big case that sort of hit the media here, and ever since then it's been a pullback on kids.
But always, it's different than it used to be. When I was a kid, it was different than it used to be. And that's, I think, what happens in religions, in churches and things too, is people get locked into the way it used to be and can't adapt to what is today. And that's why we're seeing the decline of so many religious institutions today, because people are just rejecting out of hand without looking for something to replace it with. And that's probably why we have interest in this paranormal and, spiritualism and that kind of thing, because people need something to hang on to besides this physical life.
Right, and mysticism and things like that are so prevalent. Yeah. There was also something else you mentioned about the parents and their ideas, and back to the indoctrination of children, and that is what I heard there. You didn't say it in these terms. Was what was really coming up for me, though, was shadow work. Is for for those that aren't familiar with that terminology, but the idea of looking at your preconceived notions, beliefs that are actually running your decision making, right? And is that something that? So let me pose it this way: in the world of spirituality, in the world of a community of spirituality, would you recommend that an organization or a community center, or it's not a community center, a spiritual center, take on doing shadow work?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I was talking to someone the other day, and they used the phrase, our heritage and healing. And I just thought, wow, we all have not necessarily a cultural or ethnic heritage, but just the heritage of our family, the things I joked in my talk last week. My mother used to say, them that wants don't get, them that asks don't get, them that don't ask don't want. It was sort of a joke, but my little mind said, life isn't going to ever be easy for you. You're going to have to get out there and do it on your own. And I turned out to be one of those people who do it all on my own. And, at my age, I suddenly realized where that came from. And so I thought a good workshop might be that, sharing those ideas, those hidden ideas that are directing our lives, whether we know it or not.
Yeah, thank you. You just reminded me, one of the, I guess, being in a family of 6 kids and, only one spouse working, the mantras I heard were things like money doesn't grow on trees.
Yes.
we can't afford that. That's too expensive. And I know for myself that for especially my first 20s and 30s of my
Yes.
life, that was a regular conversation for me.
Yeah.
And I have no money.
Yeah.
And guess what?
Carried that forward into experience. Yeah.
I had no
of course.
money.
That's right. Nobody in our family's ever been rich, and rich people aren't very nice anyway. So who would want to be rich?
Oh, right, right.
all
Those
things,
evil rich people, right? So that in the world of spirituality, one of the things that we could do then is to begin to unpack ourselves, really,
Absolutely.
right, and begin to do that work and see where these belief systems come from. See any ideas we're carrying. I mean, even for myself. I've had a full circle. I was brought up in a Catholic household, and I've gone the full spectrum around from, being a young boy, believing, becoming an altar boy, doing all of that stuff, and then absolute rejection to almost a point of hatred of it, where I would there's no way I would, and now I've come to peace with it.
Yes.
And all those things using the word God and all that stuff has come.
Yeah.
I have my own beliefs around it now, and I've seen that part of me, right? And that's really what we're talking about when it comes to doing spiritual work, is to get in and see that part of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I, on the other hand, was brought up with no religious tradition, but as a child, always knew I'd go to Sunday school with my friends once in a while, and I knew that wasn't what I wanted, but I knew I wanted something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just reminded me of something funny. There was this, I remember when I was in grade 8 or something, there was a girl that used to come to my church with a friend of hers just because she liked me. I just thought that was so funny. I just remembered that.
Yes, there's strangest ways to get her. It was the butterscotch suckers for me that would, You've got to get them in there somehow.
Yeah. So let's unpack this world of spirituality a little bit more. So you said that you had mentioned to me earlier that you had a definition
I do have a
of
definition.
spirituality,
And I'm going to.
you're going to read it. I
I'm
know,
going to
because
read
I challenge you to
I'm a
memorize
good memory.
this.
Well, I could, but here it is. Spirituality involves the recognition of a feeling or sense or belief that there is something greater than myself, something more to being human than sensory experience, and that the greater whole of which we are all a part is cosmic or divine in nature. So religions can encompass that. Spirituality can encompass religion, or it can transcend.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I see with religion, and I have to even say that as much as I love unity, and I do believe we have some dogma, and what I kind of, if I pull back a little and look at religion, one of the things that I still see today is the mine's right, yours is wrong. Mine's better, yours is worse.
Right.
That and yet, if you, like you said, if you get to the core
Yeah.
of what the work is,
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with that.
Yeah. Everything seems okay then. And you're quite right that unity, one of the things we like to say is that we don't have dogma. We do have some. It's fairly basic, but the thing about unity, new thought, is that while there is dogma, you're very welcome to challenge it and question it and take the part of it that works for you and leave what doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things I've appreciated about unity is that there's no, hey, you need to think this way, you need to take on this belief system.
Right.
I would say for me, my view would be that as long as what you're doing isn't hurting anybody else or yourself, then bring it.
Yes.
Let's talk about it. Let's see how it fits, and anybody's willing, is capable to take it on or try it on.
Yeah, and that's why in unity centers there's usually workshops and groups, discussion groups, explorers, seekers. Yeah, that's just who we are.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that is, and maybe I'll shift gears a little here from our conversation on spirituality to unity.
Okay.
And one of the things that is coming up is there seems to be, from some of the ministers I hang out with and some of the groups I chat with in the U.S., there seems to be a push to bring back the ideology of Christianity in unity. And, I'll ask your thoughts on this, but at first I was kind of okay with it. And then I was on a call, in a conversation with some people the other day where they're in spiritual centers where they have people that are Jewish and they have people that are Muslim.
Yes.
And the minute that they stand up there and say, we're Christian,
yes,
that's going to shoot, like, how are those people going to feel? And I hadn't thought of that.
Yes.
And so I've now had to sort of back myself up a bit here and go, I'm not sure that that's the right approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you
Well,
see in that?
you're right. There is a push towards that, and there's also a great deal of pushback
Yes,
on that.
yep.
The thing is, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, the founders of Unity, called it originally practical Christianity, as sort of an alternative Christianity, because they lived 150 years ago in the Bible Belt of the United States. There was nobody who wasn't Christian. I often wonder whether they would call themselves Christian today, and I have doubts. And I think that's because of the extreme right-wing Christianity that a lot of people don't want to be painted with the same brush. There's a whole range of Christian faiths as well. I tend to say, well, if I'm asked, I say, yes, I'm Christian, but not exclusively. Because it's the teachings of the man Jesus that's actually the basis of Christianity, not all the dogma about him. No. Yeah, so we can certainly embrace those Christian values and the teachings of Jesus, but I do not personally identify as Christian.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I feel also that Charles Fillmore, who is known for uttering the words, "I reserve the right to change my mind."
Yes.
Looking at today, the science that has come around, the spiral dynamics, the quantum, all of the explosion that has happened in the quantum field and quantum physics, which he was already tuning into in the 20s.
He lived at the same time as Einstein.
Yeah, so he was already, what's that book that he wrote, The Atom Smashing Power
of Mind, yes.
Yeah, and things like that. So he was already tuning into that. I too agree with you. I believe that if Charles or Myrtle were here today, they would be pounding that drum, and still they would have their reverence for the teachings of Jesus, because there's good teachings there.
Absolutely.
Right? It's that if you align yourself with Christianity right now, there's a lot of stuff that's going on there that maybe doesn't feel good for a lot of people. All right.
And, again, Unity's teaching is that everyone has the right to their own faith path, and that there's a nugget of truth that's actually the same when you get down to the basics. What do we really mean? It's all about love.
Yeah. And having come from parents that were very Catholic Christian, and my mom especially, who prayed the rosary every day, I really see that now. Like, I think I mentioned this in one of my talks at her funeral. We prayed the rosary, and I really saw the meditative prayer treatment that she was putting into her life every single day, that was no different than my sitting down and meditating every day on what I meditate on. It was like, oh, these practices are actually aligned. Yeah.
It's the old analogy that at the mountaintop, there's 100 paths around the mountain going to the top, but we're all going to the same place.
Yeah. Awesome. Anything else for you?
I just thought of another analogy too about the conflict from forever between religion and science, and I often refer to in my mind to an analogy I heard about the science is like the mountain goat picking his way to the top of the mountain step by step by step, and when he gets there, he finds the eagle is already there. So spirituality or religion is a way of taking a leap forward, and science is the way of backing it up. So I have no conflict myself.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's interesting because I know when I was doing some of my religious science classes through Unity, there were a great deal of scientists, and I can't name them now. I don't remember, but I remember reading in many of the texts that in a lot of cases they had religious beliefs. Like there was things they just couldn't explain with science
Exactly.
that was answered on a level of faith or spirituality that they couldn't shut it down for themselves. And so as a result, they had spiritual beliefs, yet they were very science driven.
Yeah.
You know?
Einstein for one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful.